Alright, in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about relationships and how the most important relationship is the one that you have with yourself. During my experience in life, I had a lot of trauma in my youth when I was younger. And it first started with my family. My grandparents were very abusive to my mother, her parents, and then they were very abusive to her children. And I also experienced trauma from my siblings. I've experienced trauma from my teachers, from my babysitters, from daycares, just lots of neglect. I was bullied and picked on since I can remember, from family and just everyone in society and stuff like that. I did not feel safe anywhere I went. I didn't feel like I belonged, and I felt different from everyone. And I didn't know why I was here. But sometimes I even felt different than my family members and stuff too. I used to think I was switched at birth because I saw things differently. And I don't know, I just thought this world was very sad, and I didn't understand a lot of it because when we were younger, our parents took us to church and stuff when we were first learning about God and our Creator, and how the Creator created, the earth and everything and everyone and everything on it, the plants, the trees, the land, the animals, all of us, and then as I got older and I saw my parents struggling, they had 4 kids to pay the bills. And we would hear their conversations, and I didn't understand it because when I talked about what I learned in church and everything, well, if God, the Creator, created, this world and everything for us, why are we paying some man, somebody who's claiming to be in charge, why are we having to pay for it? And if somebody had invented, electricity, why are we paying for it? Why isn't it something that's shared that we all have for free? I did not understand that because my heart wanted us all to have everything because we deserve to have it, because the teachings that I was learning was about unconditional love and to love one another, and this is what our Creator intended. But that was not the world that I saw around me. Okay. Sorry, my heart opened and I had to release that. So anyways, as I got older and the more I listened to the Christ teachings, a lot of the stories that I was hearing in the Bible that, I knew that some of these have been altered by man, and that a lot of them, like the basic principle was about loving one another, and a lot of the stories I heard were about, good morals and just like basic principles, how to be a decent person and how to care for people. And so that was something that had always been in my heart. And when I would hear the stories of, Jesus, and what he would do for the people, and hearing that there was this corruption in man, and that they were charging people and telling people that you had to pay for your soul to go to heaven, that these priests, these men, would stand there and be the connection to God for us, and they would vouch for us and say that we were worthy because we paid, our dues, we gave them money, so therefore we're worthy, and that if you were poor, that somehow you were a sinner, and so you deserved to be in poverty because there was something wrong with you. And then to have my parents, to see them suffer and to provide for us, because society says, this is what everything needs to look like, and this is what your home should be, and this is how you should dress, this is the prim and proper, your life should look like this little cookie cutter box and stuff like that. And if your life doesn't, you don't measure up, and you have done something to offend like your God. And I did not believe into that, and my parents, we've always had a garden, we've always had animals, my dad was always the avid gardener, and my mom, she was the animal husbandry. We had rabbits, we've had chickens, we had, when I was very young, we had a horse, a pony. And we've always had dogs and cats, chickens, those basic things, because that is what helped to nourish us and provide food for us, especially the children. And it was just our way of life all the time. And so I always had this strong connection to nature because we were always outside, providing for ourselves. And I had this strong connection to myself because I didn't have, I didn't feel safe around other people with the way that I was bullied and treated by, people that are supposed to love you. And, or care for children, those are the people who are above us. And, anyways, I always had a strong connection with nature and with animals and everything because they were safe, And so, and this doesn't mean like my parents were abusive and my siblings were abusive the whole time. No, we all had strong connections, and my family was very close. We loved each other. I knew my parents loved me. I loved my siblings. We were always, outside playing together. We were always together. And we did have a strong bond. It wasn't until later on in like my teenage years that I experienced the issues, you know what I mean? They had everybody has their own, energies and attitudes, growing up in teenage years and stuff like that. Everybody transitions and we transform and we change. We come into more awareness of ourselves and the world around us. And so it changes us. And our experiences, they change us and they give us, it gives us information. We're always recording, we're always learning, and we're always receiving information from the outside world about who we are and how to function and to be and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable by the people that you're seeking approval from, And I didn't realize it back then, but that's how I learned to navigate and get through everything, is I eventually had to empower myself to realize that those types of people that judge others by their clothes or by their hair or by their makeup, or their house and what they're born into, if you are judging people by the outside shell, then you are somebody who's shallow. You're only a surface seeker, you only look at the outside of a person and you judge them right away, and you automatically assume and you automatically label them as this type of person. And instead of trying to get to know them on a deeper level and understand their journey and what they've been through and how they've gotten, how they have entered the journey, where they began and what has their experience has been, what has led you to this place, this person that you are today, and a lot of people don't connect in that way. A lot of people only look on the outside and they don't go within. Everybody's always judging, and that judging comes from, society, from parents, from insecurities, from our own acknowledgement of who we are and getting to know ourselves on a deeper level, because we're comparing and we're always trying to seek outside of ourselves validation from the outside world. And I learned that I didn't need those people's approval if they didn't want to be my friend, or if they didn't want to be in my life, not to take it personally, because if somebody truly cares about me and wants to be in my life, they wouldn't judge me, one, and they would get to know me and want to be my friend. And so if they are just shallow people, I don't really want them in my life either, because I'm not a shallow person. So that's kind of how I got through a lot of things in my younger years, and I didn't realize the wisdom that I had even back then. And I believe it's probably because of the experience that I had, because I didn't feel safe out there, that I learned to go within and find my safety space within me and bring it everywhere I go, so that I always felt a connection. And it has given me so much wisdom. It has been lonely a lot of the times because I didn't find other people like me for a long time, and I'm still having a hard time. I do find a lot of people who I connect with and I'm very good friends with, But, you know, it's hard to have those kinds of conversations with other people. But there are, you know, I know there's a lot of us out there who have the same type of situation and feeling and experience. So I know I'm not alone, and I'm not saying I am. But, you know, people that are very deep. A lot of people haven't met themselves that deeply yet. So I'm still aligning to finding those other people. So I'm not saying I haven't met them, I have. So anyways, I'm going to run to the restroom. I'll be back in just a minute, you guys. So that's why I want to say having the first relationship you should have is the one that you have with yourself, and that should mean the most to you, you know, is taking care of yourself and loving yourself and having a healthy relationship with who you are, and knowing your worth and your value, because it teaches you to set those healthy boundaries like I had to learn to do. You know, I had to learn to protect myself and to protect my heart, and then not everybody out there has the best intentions for you, and not everybody sees things like you. And you know, to learn that some people can tell you one thing and their actions be something different. You know, people can tell you all day that they love you or that they're sorry, and then turn around and kind of do it again, you know, and then make an excuse why it was okay, you know. And sometimes we even do that ourselves. When you have a huge heart and you're very empathic and understanding, and you know, you understand that people go through things in life, and there's a lot of us experience a lot of trauma, and sometimes we haven't figured out how to heal or to move forward from that trauma, so we end up bringing it with us, and we end up, you know, projecting it on the people, and sometimes we're unaware, but sometimes people will let you know when you're projecting them, or when you're hurting them, and when you announce that this is hurting me, and you learn to have those conversations, you know, because you with people that you love and who love you, you should be able to have those vulnerable moments to say, I need to have a conversation, I need to talk to you about something. Like the other day, you know, for instance, like let's say, you know, you said something and it triggered me, or it made me feel like you were saying this, or that you were trying to hurt me, or it made me feel like you didn't love me, that you didn't care about my feelings, and it was just very hurtful. And you know, I don't want to feel this way, and giving them an opportunity to clarify, or to say I'm sorry, or to acknowledge, you know, that there was a painful experience coming from the person that you love on your behalf, you know, that something that you did, an action you took, hurt somebody that you love. And when that person that you love says that this hurt me, this is your opportunity to apologize and to say, you know, ooh, you know, I'm sorry. Either I had a bad day, I wasn't even aware, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it like that. You know, whatever the case is, whatever your truth is, you know, because always speak your truth from your heart. If you did something, like, you're right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, and I apologize, I don't want you to feel that way, you know. And that's how a healthy relationship is supposed to navigate. But you both have to be in that place of wanting to love each other, to help each other, to heal, to grow, to you know, confront your own actions and your own behaviors, and taking responsibility for them, because we are all responsible for the actions that we take and how we cause pain on others, with knowingly or unknowingly, you know. And a lot of people, they don't want to take responsibility for something, and sometimes that comes from, you know, shame that they did something to hurt somebody that they love, and so sometimes people just get reactive, and you know, and it also is sometimes how you approach somebody. So like when you're hurt, a lot of people will just be like, oh, you a-hole, you know what I mean, F you, or whatever like that. It just comes off very aggressive, and it makes the other person want to just be defensive and, you know, shut it down, because there's this explosive energy coming at them. And so anybody, you know, it's just like a big fireball, so everybody's just going to protect themselves and shield, and some people just be like, you know, well, you and you, and that's how you know that there's resentment building up. There's some anger, some feelings that haven't been addressed, and there's some healing that needs to take place. There's some deep conversations that need to happen. And you have to learn to, like, when somebody is approaching you very nasty and negatively, to immediately, like, pump the brakes on that, you know, set that boundary that says, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, you need to calm down, because I'm not a stranger, not somebody you don't know who's hurt you. Like, woo, I just got like a big tone, a big vibration in my head. 1224, look that up. What was I saying? Yeah, okay, so setting those boundaries. If somebody comes attacking you, you know what I mean? Of course you want to defend yourself. So immediately it's like, you know, address, like, I'm sorry that you're upset, but, you know, we're not going to go anywhere if you're coming at me like that. You know what I mean? It's like, slow your roll. Like, sit down, let's have a conversation. Don't come at me attacking me like that, because I don't even know what you're talking about sometimes. I mean, but sometimes if you know that you went around and you did something to, like, push somebody's buttons or to be passive aggressive in some way, like, you better expect somebody to come at you upset because you're poking buttons. I mean, like, you can't be like, oh, why, you know, play the victim, you know. And you got to see how people, this is how people, like, their relationships function, you know, and it's dysfunctional. Somebody has to be the mature one. Somebody has to be able to communicate. And a lot of us don't get these tools, you know, and a lot of us don't feel secure with ourselves. We don't feel brave enough to express that. And that can be, you know, through our own insecurities, or because we've been hurt by other people. And so it's hard for us to be vulnerable with people. But you should value somebody who has the courage and the vulnerability to sit down and say, hey, you know, I care about you and this hurt me. And so that it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to be able to do that, because it's putting, like, your heart out there for somebody to just smack it, throw it on the ground, kick it around and break it, you know. And if that person, when you do that, when you're vulnerable and they take your heart and they just smash on the ground and be like, so what, you did this and you did that, you know, or, you know, well, how dare you tell me, you know, what you did like 3 years ago, 3 months ago, you did this and you did that, and I didn't say anything. It's like, well, then shame on you, because if I hurt you, you have to tell me that I hurt you. I don't want to walk around here hurting you. You know, I'm not, what the hell are we doing in a relationship? Why are you telling me you love me if you're just going to hold on to some anger and negativity about me and then take it and use it later on down the road to justify you doing something negative to me? Like, why would I deserve that? You know what I mean? And what about you thinks that you would deserve me hurting you and not caring? You know, it's horrible to think that this is what happens in relationships, you know? And it's sad and it's painful to observe people in relationships where this is the dynamic, you know, and it's because they just get stuck in a rut and they don't know. Like, we're together and, you know, I love you, but I don't love the things you do to me, you know? And so it's learning and discerning, what am I learning from this experience with this individual, you know? And sometimes people aren't meant to be in our lives forever. They're meant to teach us those lessons. And we're learning from this experience something, you know? And so when that relationship dissolves and it doesn't work out all the way, is because you're learning something from that individual, and that individual's learning something from you, but your energies aren't in an alignment anymore. You know, you've learned all you can from this experience, and now it's time to go learn something new and go on another journey. So when you find yourself, you know, alone, enjoy that time alone, because that's your time to connect to yourself and do some healing work, or to learn how to be more vulnerable, or set healthier boundaries. You know, it depends on each case, on who you are in the relationship. And know that you are worthy and deserving. There's some healing that needs to take place, but learning, you know, your worth and your value, and learning how to communicate, learning how to care, learning how to share, because relationships are all about, you know, compromising and communication of our needs and what our wants are, desires of what we would like to have the relationship grow into. I mean, some people just fall in love with the physical and don't really get to know them on a different level. I mean, of course, chemistry and physical attraction all plays a part in relationships. But before you give your whole heart away to somebody, you need to know who they are and how they handle stress, how they handle their emotions, how they're going to handle your emotions, you know? when you're upset, when everything's not all hunky-dory and there's a challenge, how do we handle challenge? How do we communicating with one another when we're stressed or when we're hurt, when we're angry? How do people handle their emotions? What do they do with them? Because if they're not even addressing their own, they're definitely not going to care about yours, you know? So when you learn to have that healthy relationship with yourself first, then that will help you have a healthy relationship for another individual. And learning to love yourself, you know, and have that healthy conversation with yourself, heart and mind. If your mind's all critical and judgy and condemning you and shaming you, or if it's hiding and it doesn't feel secure, it feels insecure, you know, you're constantly going to be seeking, you know, outside validation that's going to verify what it is that you tell yourself. And if you learn to tell yourself that everything's going to be okay, that you're worthy and you're deserving, and, you know, if this person truly loves me and I share that this hurt my feelings, then they will be willing to hear me, to validate me, to understand where I'm coming from and change. And then it makes us stronger together. And then if somebody comes to me and they're vulnerable to me about something that I've done, an action that I've taken that has hurt them, then it is my responsibility to acknowledge that I did that and to understand their perspective and what they experience, and then move forward by changing my behavior, acknowledging my behavior, and then changing it, and not allowing that situation to come between you, you know. But also, if the individual turns around and does it again, then what should you do in that scenario? What does that tell you? You know, it tells you that this person's not committed to you and they don't really care. You know, like, yeah, you'll get over it. You'll get over it. They're testing you to see how long you're going to tolerate it. You know what I mean? Are you truthful? Are you going to back up what you say? You know, are you just going to keep tolerating me treating you like crap because, you know, you're insecure and you're going to keep tolerating it? You don't know your worth and your value. You're willing to sit here and watch me do all these things because why? You know, why? And question yourself, why? Why am I holding out for this person who's treating me this way? You know, because there's a fear of being alone. You know, you're afraid of loving yourself. You know, afraid that you aren't lovable. That's the truth. You're afraid that you're not lovable, and you're afraid that you're going to be alone. Because if this individual treats you like this, that, you know, and you keep forgiving them for doing all that, how can they not love you? You know what I mean? But the truth is, how can you not love you enough to walk away from somebody treating you that badly? You know, you deserve more than that. And that's learning to have that healthy relationship with yourself, setting those healthy boundaries, setting your standards higher, because you're worth more than that. You know, you're not just, give me the crumbs, I'll take anything. You know what I mean? That's sad. It's heartbreaking. And my heart hurts for you. It's because you don't have enough self-love. Loving yourself first, having that relationship with yourself first will help you have the best relationships with others, because you learn to take care of you and not to focus on everybody else's opinion or approval, you know? Having your own connection to God, to Source, to the Creator. That connection starts with you. There isn't anybody who needs to step in between you and God, you and yourself. You and yourself and God are the most important relationships to have. Listen to this heart. Don't ignore your heart. Don't ignore your intuition. Don't ignore those gut instincts that tell you, those are all red flags. It's all your intuition going, something don't sound right. This person's actions don't match their words. This doesn't align. You know, you catch those things, you need to listen to those things. Those are all signs. These are all your messages. Like, no. Step away, walk away from that. Set your standard. I'm not tolerating that kind of a relationship, that kind of behavior, you know, not no little kid. You are a grown adult, you know. You want healthy, you want happy, you want security, you want stability. That's what you want. You want to have that communication, that heart connection, and somebody who truly cares and values you. And that comes from you learning to care and value about you first, okay? All right, I'm going to close this message, this channel, because I have went all the way around. And like I said, these aren't scripted. This just comes from my heart to yours. And I really, truly want you guys to have that healthy relationship with yourself and to love yourself, okay? All right, I'm sending y'all lots of love. Y'all take care.